How's everyone doing? James from On Type here, and today we're looking at an INFJ INTJ relationship. We're going to go into how these two types function, how they're different, and how they work together. So first, obviously, both are, they're very similar, but they do have some key differences. We have a little picture of Mike and Rich there, an INFJ and INTJ. So NITEFISE, obviously the functions for an INTJ, and NIFETISE for an INFJ. So you see they're a little bit different there. INFJs obviously leading with a bit more FE and TI. INTJs with TE and FI. We'll get more into what that means in just a little bit. So let's dive into it. All right. So for future focus, both of these types are intuitive types. They're both N types, of course. So they have a focus on the future, on what ifs, what could happen, what is possible, and just the abstract, looking for deeper and hidden patterns, deeper and hidden meanings in things, trying to look beneath the surface. They're theoretical thinkers, of course, and they imagine possibilities and paths. With NI hero for both of these personality types, they're planning their own future. They're planning their own goals, their own things that they want to do, their own priorities. INTJs may focus on what they want with regards to things like knowledge, career, more of a pragmatic, independent focus, whereas INFJs are looking more for relationships, looking for what they want, how they can create the ideal in their relationships and in their life. So slightly different focuses. INFJs more willing to work on teams to achieve their goals, whereas INTJs a little bit more pragmatic, wanting to work alone to achieve their goals. But in general, both of these types, they can plan together. They're both very focused on plans, on strategy. And if they're working together on the same project, they're both going to have a lot of similar ideas when it comes to planning and wanting to come up with the best plan. They can show intention to each other, show, what they want, show what they want to do, who they want in general. And they can show these desires, these intentions in their communication style. But there can be miscommunication as well. INFJs, of course, focused on their future, so are INTJs. So both types may sometimes not think about what the other person wants to do because they're thinking about what they want to do. They might not think about what the other person is going to do because they're thinking about what they're going to do. So focused a little bit more individually on themselves because they're both introverted types. Of course, they have introverted cognitive functions first versus focusing on the other one. They're both also responding types, which we'll get into, but it means they might not always initiate their internal world. It is meant to be responded upon, meaning they want someone else to initiate, social situations, initiate conversation, and initiate different topics during a conversation. So that can cause miscommunication as well. And yeah, both focus a little bit more on their own aspirations as opposed to each other's. And there's a thinking focus, of course, between these types. Both of these types, they care about things like truth. They care about logic, but with slightly different perspectives. Of course, INTJs, they have thinking in those parent slots, which means they have skeptical dispositions. They're careful not to believe lies. They're careful not to listen to misinformation. They want to do their research, but they're very focused on not believing something that's untrue, not thinking something that's untrue. They're more defensive with their thinking. They want to do research and they want to gain statistics, but it's often in a protective way. It's to protect their goals, protect their feelings, their goals, and what they like and what they want are a little bit more important. But the truth is a mediating factor. They want to know the truth so that they can achieve their goals, as that's their primary weapon forward. But they're a bit skeptical in this regard. They're disbelieving. They're of course very distrusting of information. INFJs, they have their thinking function as their third function, which changes how it works. It's a bit more offensive. They're a bit more optimistic view. They're excited to learn the truth. They're excited to think things through and speak the truth. And they're a little bit more introverted with their thinking because it's TI, meaning they're spending more time thinking in their own head, going on long walks, processing things. Whereas INTJs may do more research. They're going to look things up. They're going to ask people what they think. They're going to find out the truth inquisitively, whereas INFJs are more deductive. They're more about figuring out the truth with the information they already have and deducing that information. So in a relationship together, INTJs will bring INFJs their research, their information, all of these possibilities, and INFJs will then deduce and figure out what they think is true with all of this information. INTJs more of an inductive reasoning, INFJs more deductive reasoning, and INFJs a little bit more optimistic when it comes to the truth. They might want to believe things. They might want to think things are true. They might think they know things easier, whereas INTJs a little bit more skeptical about what they really know. And yeah, so both of these types, they do value these things very highly. They are intellectual, focused in a lot of different ways, but they mediate in social situations differently as well, which we'll get into. INFJs, of course, prioritizing social harmony, whereas INTJs not prioritizing that social harmony quite as much. And in a relationship together, INFJs are going to be making sure they don't hurt the INTJ's feelings. They're going to be making sure that the INTJ feels good. So yeah, sorry, so INFJs may have to pick up some of the slack socially and make sure that INTJs don't offend people too much in that specific situation. But INTJs may have to pick up the slack with regards to demanding respect, as INFJs may be a little bit willing to take heat. And then we have their feelings deep down. Between these two personality types, both types will rarely bring up their true emotions to each other. INFJs, yes, they prioritize the social world, but more in a managing conflict way, more in a diplomacy way, not always in an expressing their emotions outwardly, not always going to be super adoring and expressive with feelings, just in terms of managing things so they don't upset anyone. INTJs, they're a little bit more expressive with their feelings and emotions with FI, and they don't necessarily care how other people feel or what other people like or prefer. And they're going to express their opinions more brazenly without care, which can help in this relationship, as INTJs may at least express their feelings so the INFJ knows, but they're also introverted types and they're responding, which means if probed about their feelings, they'll express them, but if not probed, they might not always volunteer them. And in general, INFJs, they will listen to an INTJ's feelings on things, and they generally do care about them. So INFJs have that FE caring about other people's feelings, and INTJs have that FI feelings that they want to express, they want to be cared for, and they can be appreciative in kind. So that's kind of how it works between them with their emotions. When it comes to sensing together, both of these types can cope with reality through things like hedonism, self-destruction. The possibilities are always a little more optimistic than the reality for these personality types, and both of them see what can be improved and can be sometimes annoyed by what is. And when together, they can enjoy each other's company in kind of a silent way. They can enjoy, they're both introverted personality types, they're enjoying each other's company. They have very similar senses of humor. They have sensing in the 4 slot, so there's a lot of similarities. They're not going to be overly humorous in terms of, super optimistic where they're saying everything that comes to their mind. They're a little bit more quality focused with their humor. They're going to say things that they think are really funny. So that kind of works. Neither one is like super in your face loud, but is going to have witty humor, and they can kind of express that together. They're going to be able to enjoy each other's kind of company with that similar disposition. But both types might not express a lot of positive feedback. They might not express, oh, that was a really fun time or that was a good experience, because they're more focused on other people. They're focused on other people's experience, other people having a good time, other people being comfortable. So they might not always express their own comfort, their own feedback. And in general, both types are a little bit more closed off. They don't always want to overshare. SI is about sharing. SI is about, your life, your experience. What are you doing? So it's like, oh, I went to the, get my hair cut yesterday, and then I got this for lunch. And sharing things about your life so people get to know who you are. Both of these types want to know who other people are to gain that kind of intimacy, but they don't necessarily share themselves. They both might think, oh, what are they going to do with this information, or who cares? How is that helpful potentially? And so they might not share enough, and so the other person never fully gets access to their internal world because of that, and that can be a problem. But there's strengths to a relationship between these types as well. Both types are generally pretty strategic, deep thinkers. They like to analyze things, come up with the best path forward, and have a very strong strategy. They get to talk abstractly together, talk deeply about things, talk about what ifs, make jokes, make abstract references. INFJs in a relationship with an INTJ are going to be focusing on their NE and TI more if they want it to be more successful. They're going to want to be a little bit more flexible to what the other person wants, willing to express their thoughts openly without needing someone else to initiate. And same and similar with INTJs, they need to be more NE and FI, so more compatible. They need to be willing to do what the other person wants as well. They need to listen to what the other person wants to do. And they need to express their feelings more openly, not necessarily need someone to ask them how they're feeling, but just express it and kind of volunteer that information. Both of these types are generally going to need to do that more, volunteer information more, share more, express things more, ask more questions, be willing to be a little bit more extroverted for this relationship to work very well. And they can work well on a team, as obviously they have very similar dispositions. They care a lot about strategy, and if they want to master skills, see things through together, they can be really good because they're very, very similar in that way. They both want very similar things, so that can work well side by side. So yeah, final thoughts, both of these types, they can be great friends, they can have a great relationship together, but they can sometimes struggle for deeper intimacy because of their incompatibilities. Both can be pretty shy and will need to force some more initiation. Force, hey, I'm going to ask them if they want to hang out. I'm going to volunteer my thoughts if you're an INFJ, or I'm going to volunteer my feelings if I'm an INTJ, and volunteer your introverted functions a little bit more so the other person knows where you're at, be a little bit more compatible. Both types can enjoy some of the similarities that they have, as they're very similar in some ways, and there's some differences in their personality that make them compatible as well. So it's kind of an interesting pair, as both of these personality types have an interesting dynamic. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this pairing. Please like and subscribe, as it helps the channel, and I hope you all have a great day.